I'll call the Planning Commission in order, or to order here at 7:35 PM on January 17th. So first, roll call. Myself, Chair Luke Mruzek, I'm here. Vice Chair Testman. I do not see.
He is requested to be excused tonight, Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Aliff,
Present.
Commissioner Goodman. Commissioner Goodman? Didn't hear you.
He's here.
Yeah, I see him up there.
That gets his mute button.
I think you're muted, Commissioner Goodman. Still can't hear you.
He's clearly present, but not able to speak.
We saw him. I come back. Commissioner Lambert,
Here.
present in the room. Commissioner Mather is absent. Any contact with Commissioner Mather?
No, Chair.
And Commissioner Smith, did he say he would be out this time?
I believe he did, yes.
Yeah, I think he's traveling, yeah. Commissioner Goodman, can you try again?
I'm here.
Okay, very good. All right, so we have a quorum. So I'd like to move that we approve the agenda for January 17th as written. Can I get a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Agenda is approved. We've got a motion here to elect a chair and vice chair, and open for discussion if you want to do that with 4 people, or if you wanted to wait till we got more attendees. And I'm open either way. Staff, any?
In general, I think our suggestion would be to postpone this pending getting more of the commission present,
Okay.
at least hopefully 5 or 6, but you can certainly proceed if you want to.
Yeah, I think it was the administration's preference to proceed forward with re-election or appointment.
Okay. Can I get a nomination for chair?
So, Chair, if you do want to proceed, I do have some, if you'll indulge me, I do have
Please.
some things to go over here for chair election. So to give a little way of background, the Planning Commission historically has operated with a chair and a vice chair. They both serve 1-year terms. Typically, the elections happen at the first meeting of the year, which would be this one. Occasionally, they have been postponed, but we try to get it done. There are no specific code requirements. In fact, the code doesn't even mention the chair or vice chair positions, but the chairs serve, all commissioners can serve. That includes the mayor and the council liaison, although typically those two being ex officio members would not stand, would not accept a nomination should one even be offered for them. The election of a chair does provide an opportunity for commissioners to step into a leadership role for this planning commission and bring some new ideas about the meeting format, agenda items, speakers, and things along those lines. This year's going to be pretty busy with work on the comprehensive plan and also implementation of the budget and capital improvement projects. The mayor has certainly expressed a preference to elect a new chair if the current chair has served for 2 or more years. If they've served for less than that, they could, the mayor has indicated she would be fine with that person serving for an additional year. That said, the mayor is definitely appreciative of the time and the leadership that current and prior chairs have provided to their respective commissions, including the Planning Commission. If anyone has specific questions, they should certainly feel free to reach out to the mayor directly to discuss that. With all that said, for the procedure here, we'll open the floor for nominations for 2023. Nominations don't require a second, so anyone can nominate any other commissioner. However, the nominee must accept the nomination. So if they decline, then they would not be a nominee. We'll make sure that all the nominations get heard, and then we can close them. At that point, we'll provide an opportunity for nominees to speak to their qualifications or their interest in serving. And then following that, the floor would be open for commission discussion about the nominees. Then we'll call for a vote, and we can do, typically we just do them in the order they're nominated, but we can do whatever order we need. And the nominee who gains a majority would be elected chair. Because there's no specific procedures, because there are 4 of you here at the moment, that would mean you would need 3 votes to be elected as chair. And then we repeat the process for the vice chair. And I see Commissioner Goodman has a question here.
Yes, I thought I heard you say that the preference would be to wait until we have a bit fuller of a group present. Did I mishear that?
What you heard is that certainly in the past, the commission has tended to wait to have more commissioners present for chair and vice chair elections. The director has indicated that the city administration prefers to proceed today. So
okay.
at the end of the day, it is up to the commission, I will say. So you've heard the position of the city administration here and some historical information. So with that, I would defer to the commission as to whether you want to proceed or not. It sounds like you want to, but you could certainly have that discussion before proceeding nominations.
Yeah, I have no objection to proceeding if nobody else does.
I'm fine with it. The only thing I would say is that Testman's not here. He's the current vice chair. I guess one thing, I don't have the capacity to do either roles, so I mean, I'll vote, but that's all I'm giving, I just don't have time. So I wonder if we have enough candidates.
Commissioner Goodman?
Thanks. Two points. I guess I'd be happy nominating current Chair Mariziak to continue if he's so interested. My other point is, I've really enjoyed Commissioner Mather while he's been here, but I feel like it's been quite a while since we've seen him, and I'm wondering, do we expect him to, be a regular member again, or just wondering if there's sort of an update on that, because I think that also might come into play here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. First of all, I'm happy to accept the nomination. Second, yeah, I've had the same concern. When I last talked to Commissioner Mather, he did show up the following meeting, and it seemed like there was a communication issue, but I can't imagine that 6 months later, we still have a communication issue. So let's parse this. I'd be happy to accept the nomination to remain as chair for a second year.
Okay, are there any other nominations for chair for 2023? Going once, going twice. All right, nominations are closed. I don't know if Commissioner Marusiak has anything you'd like to say about being chair, or if.
Well, no, I've enjoyed following in the previous chair, Councilmember Johnson's footsteps, and would like to serve another year.
All right, any discussion from the rest of the commission on the nomination of Commissioner Marusiak?
If Commissioner Goodman had not nominated him, I would have as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Next year, one of you two are on the docket, though.
Sounds fair.
Is that a warning?
All right, well, with that, all those in favor of electing Commissioner Marusiak as chair for another year, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, seeing as how I'm pretty sure I heard a majority there, so Commissioner Marusiak, congratulations, or Chair Marusiak.
Thank you. Thank you. How do you want to handle vice chair?
I think the same discussion it would be applicable here. The commission could proceed now if there was a member willing and able to serve as vice chair, or you could postpone a vice chair election process to a future meeting when you would have more commissioners present.
You can also nominate,
We can nominate
yeah, you can nominate.
Vice Chair Testman?
I thought he had to accept before we could vote for him was the issue.
Yes, procedurally, he needs to be able to accept the nomination or reject it, as the case may be, so you can't nominate somebody who's not present.
Yeah, I'd suggest we wait until he's present and then we have the vice chair discussion.
Are there any other nominations?
Well, well, I mean,
I'd still like him here because he is the current vice chair.
I think the threshold issue is would the commission like to proceed with a vice chair nomination election process right now, or would they prefer to wait? Leaving aside whether there are potential candidates here, present at the meeting or not.
Right. I'd prefer that the 2022 vice chair would be here to have that nomination.
I agree with that.
Yep, same.
Okay, so vice chair election postponed until next meeting. Okay,
All right, thank you.
all right, moving on to the next agenda item. I move that we approve the minutes dated December 5th, 2022 as written.
Second?
Okay, I do have open for discussion, one comment.
Okay.
The very end of the mission says Commissioner Muzak continue to promote in-person attendance if possible, which I do. I think we ought to strike the potluck is scheduled for the second week of January 17th, because we didn't really get it's actually scheduled. We talked about it, so I'd just like to strike that sentence. Okay. And then I'd like to approve the minutes dated, call for vote to approve the minutes dated December 5th, 2022 as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Next agenda item is the Permit Review Design Review Board.
All right,
Buckshot Honey, Pergola.
thank you, Chair. Let me, get things up here.
Point of order.
I'm sorry, point of
Oh.
order?
I think we missed the council liaison report.
Yeah, liaison.
Oh, I'm
Sorry
sorry.
about
Did I skip that? We totally missed that.
We,
Yeah,
we, we even got on the agenda this time.
Yeah. Sorry. The next agenda item is the council liaison update.
Thank you, Chair. So I have two things that I wanted to make sure that the Planning Commission was aware of. The first is that the council is, I believe, likely to, we did approve, because that was, I believe, in the staffing, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was in the that first part of the agenda at the last meeting. What do we call that? The consent agenda. The buildable lands
Oh,
report.
yeah, the
Yeah, the middle
contract.
housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we did approve that. Okay.
Yeah, that was on consent.
Thanks. Yes, it was on consent. Okay, so we approved the buildable lands and missing middle housing report, which is a report that we will hopefully be getting soon, which is going to address the idea of missing middle housing in Snoqualmie. And the idea is that it's going to look at the spectrum of housing that's kind of in the range between single family homes, detached homes, and mid-rise to high-rise, which I don't even think that we technically have anything in the city that qualifies as mid-rise for housing. I'm not mistaken, yeah. So it's kind of in that range. So we basically have very little that's in that range of so-called missing middle housing. The idea of missing middle housing is to provide an increase in the number of units, which often include affordable units. And the buildable lands report will identify opportunities for additional housing types and hopefully affordable units as well. So we're looking forward to that. Just curious from staff, do we have a timeline? I don't remember there being a timeline attached to that for when we're expecting.
Oh, we'll be starting the work this quarter.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be working on that over the next few months. Yeah. And then the next thing was that regarding the code amendments that were recommended by the Planning Commission regarding permitting and the landmark district and the Historic Design Review Board, et cetera, the council is, in my estimation, likely to approve that with a couple of little changes that were recommended by the Community Development Committee, especially regarding if there were variances in an application to the city code. The Community Development Committee thought that that's something that the city council should review rather than a hearing examiner, because the city council can look at factual things that relate to the look and feel of the city and the intent of the code that a hearing examiner that is not a Snoqualmie resident wouldn't quite understand or be able to review. So that was the intent there. The city council has not approved that yet because it's only gone through the first reading, and our rules and procedures say that for code amendments, you have a first reading and then you can approve on a second reading, except in certain exemptions. But based on the conversation, I think it's likely that the council will adopt everything the Planning Commission recommended, and just with that one change. And I'm very thankful to the Planning Commission for their hard work on that. It was a lot of effort, and it saves the council a lot of time going through that process, having you folks dedicate your time to doing a good job on the work that you do. And I look forward to everything else that's in your upcoming work plan to be on par or exceed our expectations, as you always do. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
But I'd be happy to take any questions on that or other items that the Planning Commission would like to know about.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, now, thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Now, permit review, design review board, Buckshot Honey Pergola.
All right, so I will present this one and give it a second for a screen share. There we go. So Buckshot Honey, which is over at the corner of Falls Avenue and River Street in the, used to be a former city planning office and a bank before that, is proposing to add a, zoom in there so you can actually see it a little better, a pergola or trellis type structure. Today out there in that exact area, they have a fenced in outdoor eating area. And so they're proposing to erect a permanent accessory structure to cover it. The plan set you have and the staff report you have was written assuming an open pergola trellis structure. The applicant, who is here tonight, has indicated they are looking to, in fact, put a roof on that. So you can see the renderings that were included in the packet here show the open structure. Excuse me while and they don't have a good rendering of it, but they were pointing out there it goes. The roof material would be very similar to the building immediately behind the Buckshot Honey building. You can see, so that's looks like a standing seam metal roof there in a silvery gray color. The proposal, of course, would be much lower than that because it would be a pergola trellis structure, not a full building, so it would not come all the way up this building. The staff report goes through analyzing the criteria under the Historic Design Review and notes that, first of all, this most importantly, this is an accessory structure. It is not directly attached to or part of the existing building, which is a critical point because that is a contributing building to the landmark district, and any changes to that building are subject to some, if you will, heightened criteria because of the nature of that building and its historic status. So this one is, importantly, it's separate. and it is using different materials. It's not attempting to blend in with it really or mimic it. It's a separate structure composed of wood, which is a natural material which fits with the criteria for the historic district. It certainly falls into the height limit, and as an accessory structure, the criteria for it are certainly lower than it would be for a more permanent, enclosed building. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. As I stated, the applicant is also here tonight, and they can answer some questions for you. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
And the staff, because this is not attached to the building, that actually was a question I was going to have, recommends the approval of this?
Correct.
So first I'll poll the other commissioners. Any comments or questions? I can't see Commissioner Aliff?
Oh, sorry.
Looks like a solid addition, and quite appropriate to the site. I think it'll make a great outdoor space.
Okay, Commissioner Goodman?
Agree. Just, I guess I'm curious. It looks like was there any permitting or what sort of action was taken in order to put the space that there currently is there? Because it looks like it does take up a parking spot or two. Just curious about that.
Yes, so here, let me switch back to this, which is a current photo. So as you can see, it is taking up, per the original site plan, it's taking up 2 parking spots. The original permitting for this was done, I believe, just about 2 years ago now, or just a little under 2 years ago, during COVID. And because so first of all, Buckshot Honey has a relatively large parking lot next to it, which is where this sits, and also
Right.
in the downtown area, there is a significant amount of street parking available in the immediate vicinity, both right on River and on Falls, but also on Railroad Avenue. And so the incidental loss of 2 parking spots was not considered a significant issue. The historic district regulations do allow for reductions in parking below the requirement. So at the time, it was not considered a big issue, and it's not considered one now.
Thank you. No, I'm all for less parking. Just curious. And then my other question is, is this the type of structure where, if at some point in the future, however long in the future, this turns into a different use, is that the type of structure that's going to stay there permanently, or is it the type that would be, pretty easy to take down if it was, not compatible with whatever some future use would be?
Yeah, so it is proposed as a permanent structure. It would be, sorry, I'm going to the next page where you can see this is the building permit. So you can see there is a footing here, which should be, concrete embedded in the ground. That said, this type of structure is not difficult to remove. So, in a hypothetical future where this business closed, sold, moved on, whatever, a future owner could relatively easily tear this out if they so chose. It's not, you can see there's 18-inch concrete footing there. So
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Just curious. Otherwise, yeah, looks great. Love this kind of stuff.
Okay. Commissioner Lambert?
I have nothing.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, is it a permanent structure? So that is, the answer is yes, it is intended to be a permanent structure.
correct, and it requires a building permit.
Okay, but I do agree, I think it'll add, I think it looks great. Any other discussion, questions? What a chance to talk. At that point, the right thing. Move to approve the Buckshot Honey Pergola as presented. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I
So that is approved.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. So we move into the legislative policy items and other business. So PSRC Vision 2050 training. I'd ask if you could give a little background about that and then what we're about to go through.
Sure. So if the commission will recall, we have, so I've got to configure some things on Zoom here so you can actually hear this in a second.
Should have
Come on.
told them they had to stay.
Indeed. Where is it? There it is. So the commission will recall that we have been watching some short training videos related to the comprehensive plan update. So we watched a portion of the short course on local government planning that was provided by the Department of Commerce and the city attorney and a planning professional, a well-known planning professional before. We'll watch this short video. This was a presentation given to the city council last week. Councilmember Johnson has seen this, of course. We skipped some of the introductory things, but we're going to show this to you for Emily, about 10 minutes or so, I believe. Yeah. And obviously it's a recording, so you can't ask the PSRC presenter any questions, but you can certainly ask the director and I questions if you have them, and we'll do our best to answer.
And Jason, just to let the commissioners know and those that are listening in, we did advance this video to start promptly with the actual presentation. There were several minutes dedicated to just advertising different resources and programs at PSRC, but in order to conserve time, we just moved straight to the presentation.
All right, so without further ado, here we go. And I realize I need to unmute my computer. There we go.
For growth. It was adopted in October 2020. So at the time, this is a 30-year plan, planning for 5.8 million people in our region in the year 2050. And it really follows many of the local priorities in many of our local communities. So developing and maintaining a healthy environment and creating thriving communities. It also has a strong emphasis on housing as well as climate. And then for this plan, there's also a large emphasis on equity too. So really having an understanding of who's living in our region now and in the future, and what different needs are for different communities. So Vision 2050 is developed under this larger framework of planning in Washington State. So the state has a Growth Management Act. PSRC is the regional planning organization that develops this long-range plan, Vision 2050, which includes multi-county planning policies. And then counties and cities work together to set population and employment growth targets and policies to guide that growth. And then local jurisdictions prepare plans that are consistent with multi-county and countywide planning policies. And this is both to ensure consistency across these and fulfill those requirements of local plans, but also to ensure that our region is moving forward in a similar direction, and that those kind of overarching goals and areas of emphasis at the regional level are also apparent in local comprehensive plans. So we like to kind of think of this as our onion diagram, where those local comprehensive plans really nest in the middle there. And then they loop back to PSRC because we then certify countywide planning policies and local plans. So I mentioned that this is our plan for growth. As you can see here, from 2020 to 2050, there's a projected growth of 1.5 million people in that 4-county region, as well as 1.1 million jobs. So our region has been growing and will continue to grow. So Vision 2050 is really a plan for where people are going to live and work into the future, and how they'll get around and meet their daily needs. So some key policy themes that have really come from all of those conversations that have happened at the regional level, as I mentioned, are really similar to conversations at the local level too. So big emphasis on increasing housing choices and affordability, significantly reducing greenhouse gas emissions and a focus on climate change, as well as protecting our network of open space, as we talked about, really ensuring that natural environment can continue to thrive and be an asset in our region. So the Vision 2050 includes a regional growth strategy. So this is really the plan for where people will live and work out to the year 2050. I know this map on here is quite small, but this map is our map of regional geographies. So the city of Snoqualmie is the lightest yellow color here. It's in our cities and towns category. We see a majority of growth going to metro core and high capacity transit communities. So those are the ones in the darker orange colors. And those are really areas that have existing or future light rail, commuter rail, bus rapid transit, ferry service that are really connected to that high capacity transit network. And are anticipated to have more of that growth. So our previous plan iteration was Vision 2040, which was adopted prior to Vision 2050. In this plan, the big differences are that this plan is planning for more of that growth near transit, as I mentioned, that high capacity transit system in our region. It also has more recognition of tribes in our region and the coordination with those tribes and their coordination throughout the planning process, as well as the role of military installations. It has a new chapter on climate change to really emphasize the regional importance of mitigating climate change and resilience. And then, as I mentioned before, has more emphasis on housing and equity than our previous plan. So Vision 2050 was adopted in 2020, and currently at PSRC, we are working on the implementation of that plan. So the development of a regional housing strategy, we're currently developing a regional equity strategy, and we have a lot of planning guidance that's either been published or in development, in addition to our regional transportation plan and regional economic strategy in the teal there. But really why I wanted to show this is to show where the local comprehensive plan updates fit into this. So you can see that's the light green bar. So cities and counties are working on their plans now to be adopted in 2024. And we are working to support those plan updates. So to do that, to really translate what's in regional vision into what will eventually be the updates to local comprehensive plans, we've developed a plan review manual, which includes a checklist or consistency tool of all of the things that we're looking for when we're reviewing plans, and to really highlight what the emphasis is in Vision 2050, what those regional goals have been highlighted to be. So I'll mention this consistency tool later on. It's a really useful resource, both in developing the plan update as well as on our end when we're going back and reviewing individual plans. So as I mentioned, there's a more emphasis on housing in our newest plan, really recognizing that it's a regional issue. So people in our region are moving from city to city to find housing that's affordable to them, that meets their needs. And it really spans across the city or county boundaries. And that housing access and affordability are tied to transportation. So if you need to live somewhere farther away to get to work, you may be spending more money on transportation or more time as well as the environment, so how people are getting between places, and their overall quality of life in the community around them. So there's a big emphasis on the plan on creating a jobs housing balance where people are able to live close to where they work, and there aren't long transportation journeys in between them, and people have different options for where they live. So our regional housing strategy includes a variety of actions and tools that are really under 3 big umbrellas. So the first is supply. So that's really around building more housing of different types and having more housing that's available to people. The next is under stability. So this is providing opportunities for residents to live in housing that meets their needs. So both new residents or people moving, really having housing that's the right fit for them, as well as existing residents. So there's a lot of talk about mitigating displacement of existing communities in different areas of our region. And then the last category here is subsidy. So how can we create and sustain long-term funding sources to create and preserve that housing? So, and this is really focused at very low income households and unhoused residents. So as I mentioned before, we have these checklists that really translate what's in Vision 2050 into local plans. So since the last plan update cycle, there have been changes to state law around housing. And our review of housing and local comprehensive plans has been modified to reflect these changes. So many of those changes are highlighted in this housing checklist. And this is really where it shows how we're reviewing and what we're reviewing for and what we're hoping to see in local comprehensive plans. So that was a lot of information kind of on what's in Vision 2050 and then what it looks like for local plans. This is really at the staff level. These 3 steps are how we hope to interact with local staff as they're developing and updating plans. So as PSRC, we both want to ensure that plans are consistent with Vision 2050, but we also want to ensure that there are great plans in our region to continue to build our thriving communities. So we really encourage working with our agency at all different steps throughout the planning process. So during planning, envisioning, really understanding what's in Vision 2050 and in those consistency tools. So we are always happy to come out to city council meetings. So thank you so much for having us today. I think this is a great example of this process here. And then in the plan and policy development, this is where we have guidance and resource documents to really help guide what can be included in a plan. And then throughout the review and adoption process, PSRC is reviewing those plans, working with local staff to flag any issues or talk about anything that comes up in that review process. And then we bring it to our board who has the role of certifying plans. So that was it on the kind of like technical things. I'm going to talk a bit more about the resources and guidance we have. So we've been hosting a Passport to 2044 series, which is a workshop series for really, it's been focused on staff. So this is planners and other staff at cities and counties, as well as consultants. We have had staff from transit agencies, as well as tribal governments in the states attend, and we've had a variety of different events. So we've had one on housing, climate change, critical areas, transportation. We've been doing a lot of these webinars. Our first one we had in June 2022, this was our kickoff event. We had opening remarks by Deputy Mayor Tracy Buxton from the city of Des Moines. And we co-hosted this with the Washington State Department of Commerce and MRSC and had over 300 participants live at the event on the webinar. But as with all of these events, the recordings and presentations are all available on our website. So far we've had 9 of these events on various topic areas, and we've had over 1,000 people attend them. And the participants represent 80% of cities and counties in our region, which is a great number for us. It's really great to see mostly staff and planners really engaged at this work early on in the update to local comprehensive plans. We do have another one in February specific to housing need and capacity that will be with PSRC as well as the Washington State Department of Commerce. And then we are planning a session specific for elected officials and planning commissioners. So a different audience, not focused on staff, but focused on elected officials That will be later this spring. We'll make sure you all have information on it, but I think it will be a really nice session to talk about what's the role of elected officials in updating local plans? What are those regional priorities and what do they look like at the local level? We've also produced a number of guidance documents and resources. So these are all available on our website. I will talk a little bit more about these. So we have element guides, which help provide information on incorporating Vision 2050 into those local comprehensive plans and implement their policies and actions by providing guidance, best practices, and technical assistance. So similar to our webinars, these are also really focused at the staff level, providing that assistance as those plans are being updated. And they have a lot of really good information in them, as well as links to other sources too. We also have guidance documents which are more specific than those element guides. So we have one on equitable engagement for comprehensive plans, which really talks about how to engage communities in a meaningful way and then bring what you hear from communities back to elected leadership as that the plan is being worked on. So how to really increase that community engagement and ensure different voices are heard throughout the community. And then there's also guidance on coordination with tribes and those local plans. And we have others available on our website. We also have a newsletter, which is a quarterly newsletter we launched in 2022. So if you're really interested in this comprehensive planning work, I encourage you to subscribe to it. It highlights a variety of events we hold throughout the year, as well as news on new guidance documents we've been producing and other updates from us, as well as our partners around the state. So lots of information in here. We also keep our old issues on our website, so that's a great place to browse for those things. So that is it for my presentation today. I am happy to open it up for any questions.
Thank you. I think that was useful. I want to introduce one comment that I shared privately, but I just thought it'd be worth opening up there. I spent 20 years in California, and I wound up looking at the census data very closely. And it's interesting, if you look at like 2010 to 2020, you see the growth. But if you narrow that down to 2019 to 2021, you'll see a significant loss of population, a lot of it good income producing population, something like 300,000. The reason I bring that up is there's an assumption that the population growth through 2050 is rock solid like it was pre-pandemic. And I'd just like to be careful. I mean, be careful about that. You hear about the high-tech companies doing layoffs and things like that. I came of age in Western Pennsylvania when Pittsburgh's population went in half, and nothing destroys the ability of a local government to plan like population decline. And I'm not saying we're there, but I think it's worth knocking on that 1.5 million increase assumption and saying, is that still valid post-COVID as it was pre-COVID? Because a lot's changed there. And I know that, nobody in this room is doing that, but I just wanted to put that out there because, again, for California, nobody believed that was possible, and they lost a representative, and they lost population for the first time in recorded history. That, and if it can happen there, we just ought to pay attention to it. So I thought I'd throw that out there. Oh, well, we have Commissioner Vice Chair Tessman. Welcome. Oh, good. We can look back to an agenda item. But any other comments for the commissioners?
Did they give any, was there much of a change in the growth here or in our area from 2040 versus 2050?
The PSRC vision documents don't go into that level of detail. They're more focused on more broad-based allocations. What we end up with is, let's see how I'm trying to think of the easiest way to say it. If you recall the map that the presenter showed of the different regional geographies, the different colors.
Yeah.
In general, what PSRC is doing is they're allocating different amounts of growth among the different geographies. And so the vast majority is going to go to the so-called metropolitan cities, Seattle and Bellevue, and Everett and Tacoma being those ones. Oh, and Bremerton too, excuse me. And then a smaller share going to the so-called core cities. Those are ones with regional growth centers. So Redmond would be an example there. Linwood, cities like that have these areas that they have designated for significant growth. Usually they're on a high capacity transit corridor. They have light rail stations mostly, or possibly bus rapid transit stations. And then as you move down the geographies, the amount of allocated growth gets smaller and smaller. So Snoqualmie is in the lowest tier, if you will, the so-called cities and towns category. So that has the lowest amount of growth overall allocated. Within that, it gets even more complicated because strictly speaking, the allocations are negotiated within the counties alone, because King County is what's receiving a specific growth target from the State Department of Commerce. And so then King County cities have to negotiate that amongst themselves. And the same goes for Snohomish County and Kitsap and Pierce. So I would say in the coming round of comprehensive plan updates relative to the prior one, Snoqualmie has a larger amount of growth than it did previously for a variety of reasons. And I say that in relation to the targeted growth. Obviously, Snoqualmie has grown significantly over the last 10, 20 years because of the build out of Snoqualmie Ridge. A lot of that was not, strictly speaking, accounted for in the targets assigned to Snoqualmie through the regional and county planning process. You recall the diagram she showed with the state and then the PSRC and the county-wide and then the local jurisdictions. So Snoqualmie has actually been exceeding its targets for a number of years now. Now we have a higher target. Interestingly, we now have a higher target and less, if you will, pipeline growth lined up. We had Snoqualmie Ridge plan coming online for over the last 25 years. We don't have that now. That's all done. And so while we have the Snoqualmie Mill project that's approved, that's going to account for, or at least it's planned to account for over 3/4 of our jobs target. The housing target remains something that is not well defined. It's something we're going to have to plan for as we go forward. Sorry, that was an extended answer to what sounds like a relatively simple question.
I appreciate it.
More people coming.
Yeah. I mean, I'd still like to suggest that if we're extrapolating, just pulse all those drivers one more time is what I'd like to suggest, but obviously that's above the city of Snoqualmie. Okay, any other issues with the PSRC Vision 250 training? Questions? Well, I certainly appreciate the staff for setting this up. It definitely keeps us informed and I think lined up for going into the comp plan. So since Vice Chair Tessman is here and we moved on from the election of chair, vice chair, I'd like to actually loop back to that if there's no objection. So Commissioner Tessman, while you were away, we went ahead and elected the chair. So I got another year as chair. I didn't want to have the discussion about a vice chair nomination election without the 2022 vice chair yourself being present. But since you are present, I actually would like to proceed with nominations and election of the vice chair. No issue with that? Okay, that being the case, staff, could you?
I'll give a slightly more abbreviated version of my prior spiel here. As I stated before, the chair and the vice chair of the Planning Commission serve for 1-year terms. All commissioners are eligible to serve. The mayor has indicated a preference to elect a new chair if the current chair has been in the role for more than 2 years, and if less, the current chair can be reelected. The mayor is certainly appreciative of the time and leadership that both the current and prior chairs have provided for the various boards and commissions. And if anyone has any questions, please reach out to the mayor directly. The chair and the vice chair, is an opportunity for commissioners to step into a leadership role with their respective board or commission. You can bring new ideas about meeting format, about agenda items, speakers, and other training opportunities to the commission. This year is going to be very busy because the Plan Commission, of course, has work on the comprehensive plan, along with there's implementation of the budget and the capital improvement projects. So it's 2023 is going to be a big year here. Briefly on procedure here, we'll open the floor to nominations. There's no need for a second, but the nominee must accept the nomination for it to continue. Once we close nominations, the nominees will get a chance to speak to their qualifications and desire to serve, and then we can have a commission discussion and then move to a vote. So
Good. And yeah, while you were out, I was nominated and elected to serve for my second and I guess final year as the chair. So at this point, we're accepting nominations for the vice chair.
and you can nominate yourself, by the way.
Well, I'd like to actually nominate that Vice Chair Tessman continue as vice chair for his second year as well.
Thanks, Chair.
I'll take that as an acceptance.
Yes, I accept. Thank you. I accept that nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of Commissioner Tessman being the vice chair for a second year, say aye.
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 Okay, congratulations. Commissioner Tessman, you're vice chair for a second year.
Thank you, commissioners. It's hard to believe it's been a whole year.
Yes, yeah, it'll be somebody else's turns for both these next year. Okay, moving on to Planning Commission Work Program.
Sorry, 1 second. Let me transition my screen here. So within your packet, there's a staff memo which briefly describes the purpose of the work program and next steps. And then there are 2 attachments to that. Oops, I was about to click it and then it went away. So let me pull that up here. I won't go over the memo because hopefully you've had a chance to read it. This is the 2023 program work items. You'll see that most of them have a date of TBD on them. We don't have a specific time frame identified, but I at least wanted to, like I said, quickly walk through them. The comprehensive plan update, of course, you're all aware of. We've been talking about it several times already. The next 2 are probably nearer term items. So the Snoqualmie Mill design standards is something that will almost certainly come to the Planning Commission. One of the conditions of approval of both the PCI plan for the Snoqualmie Mill and the development agreement that goes with that project is that the applicant develop a set of development and design standards which require further city approval. It was something we essentially deferred from the main permit action to a later date because it's a lot of work and the applicant certainly wouldn't want to put the time in if they weren't necessarily going to get their project approved. Now they have the approval, now they need to do this. And so this follows a similar process to what occurred for Snoqualmie Ridge, where the Snoqualmie Ridge mixed-use final plan was approved, and then the development and design standards came back through the Planning Commission and then had City Council approval at a later date. So we anticipate seeing those at some point here in 2023 as that project moves forward toward construction.
Jason, can I just interrupt? Would you mind going back to the staff report and doing just a brief, maybe 1 or 2 sentence introduction about why it's important to do a work program and you know, how it might relate to some alignment with the council committee. Thank you.
Sure. So you can see from the memo here, one of the things that we're looking to implement for 2023 is having a work program. And this identifies the major items the Planning Commission would be working on. It's intended to be an evolving document as we go through the year. So, you know, certainly as things get accomplished, they'll come off. But we also want to include it so that we can highlight, here's what's coming, here's what we want to be thinking about going forward. This is going to reflect the priorities of the administration, but also the direction of the city council and the community development committee of the city council. So the Chair Johnson over hiding in the corner off the camera, you don't need to come up, but he's currently the chair of the CD committee. That committee, of course, has a pretty close relationship with the Planning Commission as we did, both determine the work program and then work through it, because the things the Planning Commission does in almost every case get bumped up to the Community Development Committee first before they reach the full council. It's important to note here that just because something's on the work program doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get it done. And it doesn't mean we're not going to work on other things as well. It's just these are what we at this point in time see as the main focus items here. Go back to this one now. So I talked about the Snoqualmie Mill design standards. The next one on the list is the multifamily tax exemption program. This is another one that came out of the Snoqualmie Mill discussions. And so one of the conditions in the development agreement relating to affordable housing is about the multifamily tax exemption. Very briefly, the so-called MFTE program provides for a property tax exemption for a defined period of time under state law, usually 8 or 12 years, wherein a housing project providing a certain minimum percentage of affordable housing at a certain affordability level can receive this property tax exemption. And so Snoqualmie does have an MFTE program currently in place, but it only applies to what is today Panorama Apartments. They don't actually take advantage of the MFTE program for various reasons. But the Snoqualmie Mill project would be looking to take advantage of the MFTE program to achieve the full range of affordable housing that was negotiated as part of the development agreement. So that includes a number of units at the 60% affordability level, as well as the 80% affordability level. Without the MFTE program, the affordability requirements for the Snoqualmie Mill project would revert to a different requirement. So this is likely going to be a very important discussion going forward, and because there is a deadline of the end of this year, the end of 2023, for the council to take action. So definitely anticipate seeing this one come forward. The last one, the Snoqualmie Ridge mixed-use final plan amendment related to Center Boulevard retail uses. I believe the commission has heard some prior discussion, and this has come up with the city council about some of the limitations and allowances for retail uses on Center Boulevard in Snoqualmie Ridge, and how that relates specifically to several of the corner retail spaces, and how there is a waiver process built into the standards, and how that waiver process has been applied in practice. And so the CD committee and the council have directed that we take a look at this. So we anticipate having an amendment come through. Per the code, those amendments follow the process of Planning Commission, followed by council action. Finally, we have an update to the wireless code based on new FCC requirements, Federal Communication Commission requirements coming down about cellular telephone service. And then, of course, a sign code update. It's actually been, 6 or 7 years now since the Gilbert decision, which drastically changed the federal case law on signage, and the city's sign code has not been updated in many years. And so we'll be looking to do that one. Looking forward to 2024, of course, there's a continuation of the comprehensive plan update noted there. Certainly some of the, maybe a couple of these items might also fall into 2024. Either we're not going to quite get to them this year for various reasons, or they will continue on into 2024 for other reasons. And as we move through, we might identify some new items that would get added to the 2024 work program. So there's no action required of the commission. This is more of an informational and also a discussion item. If you have thoughts, feeling like, is this too much? Is this, are there other things you're interested in doing? We want to hear about it because we can try to work it in or at least have a discussion about it. Councilmember Johnson, of course, is here and he can provide his perspective on these things if there's desire from the commission as well. And I also see Commissioner Goodman has his hand up.
Commissioner Goodman?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jason. I'm wondering what exactly is our role going to be on the MFTE program, and what's our consideration going to be?
So as a land use related code amendment, typically the Planning Commission would provide a recommendation to the City Council on this. And so, as we scope this out, so I think backing up for a second, the main reason this is on the work program is because of the Snoqualmie Mill development agreement. However, with that said, as some of you may know, and I believe the director has spoken of this before, we also there have been some significant changes in what's required in our comprehensive plan as it relates to affordable housing. That's part of what Councilmember Johnson mentioned about that missing middle and buildable lands contract that the council approved, is to do some additional work on that, because what we're seeing coming down from the state and then of course through King County is a huge requirement for affordable housing at all levels of affordability, from literally 0% up to, market rate. And how we deal with that is not something we have frankly wrapped our heads around completely. But one thing we have definitely identified at this point, and everybody's identified this, and our state legislators have heard this, is that, look, to make this work, we need more tools. The tools we have, MFTE is one of the main tools we have, and it has limitations. So I think one of the big discussion points as the commission considers the MFTE is going to be, are we going to, if you will, narrowly apply it just to the Snoqualmie Mill project, or is it something we want to make usable elsewhere in the city as we look at providing additional affordable housing in Snoqualmie and in Snoqualmie Valley from a larger perspective? As I think most of you know, there is also I'm searching for the right word. It's not a committee, but it's a work group organized by Councilmember Watton, a task force, thank you, that is also looking at affordable housing issues within the entire Snoqualmie Valley and within the city of Snoqualmie, that they're going to hopefully come forward with some recommendations later this year as well. So that will probably tie in. All that to say, there's a specific reason here, and it's a little more narrowly focused, but there is a much broader conversation on affordable housing that is going to be good for this commission to have a discussion on, in the city council as well. I think
Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks. One of the things I also wanted to add in here, not trying to speak above my level of understanding with regard to case law, but my understanding in discussing this with the city attorney is that there is a great deal of case law behind the idea of having new developers that might want to develop land for housing, and then a city just saying, oh, well, you have to solve our housing affordability crisis because we didn't do it beforehand. So now it's your problem now. There's a lot of case law apparently saying that essentially cities can't do that. And there are other limitations as well regarding affordable housing. My understanding also in Washington State is that something like rent control, even if we wanted to do it, is something that is not a tool in our tool belt. So essentially, we are very limited in what we can do to incentivize affordable housing. So multifamily tax exemption is just one of those things that we can do that can help incentivize. And there are very few developers that just out of the goodness of their heart want to develop their land in a way that is affordable at either a loss or even breaking even, or even making a small profit. They have to get something if they're going to do it. Wanted to share that.
I see Commissioner Goodman's hand is up. Commissioner Goodman?
Yes, thanks. And tell me if I'm getting too deep in the weeds. I guess what I'm curious about is, is the tax exemption sort of like it's pre-written, it's sort of something that you sort of like copy paste into your code, and our discussion is just going to be how broadly are we going to apply it, or is the discussion going to be the actual content of the program, and what we would require and that sort of thing?
I would imagine it's going to be both, because I mentioned that that there's an 8-year and there's a 12-year. There's actually also a couple other provisions in there, but there is an ability for us to set kind of some different requirements at different levels. For example, if you can get an 8-year for doing this, you can get the 12-year if you're doing this. And that will also be an interesting discussion moving forward. The Snoqualmie Mill project is going to, the assumptions made in discussing the development agreement were around the 12 years. So certainly but that project would also be looking to provide affordable housing at the 60% level by utilizing the MFTE. Whereas other projects that hypothetically, if they only want to provide affordable housing at the 80% level, maybe we'd set it up so that they would get only the 8-year MFTE. So they would still get a break, some way to help, if we will, offset the cost of providing the affordable housing, but it wouldn't be the same amount as a project that's providing more affordable housing or affordable housing at a different level. So I think that's part of the discussion that we'll move through. And we'll certainly, as Chair Johnson was saying, have the city attorney to help guide us along through the various twists and turns and pitfalls when it comes to these kinds of things.
If I could add, thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for that. I noticed on the last page, we talked about a joint Planning Commission and CDC meeting in the first quarter. I think it'd be extremely useful to understand the purview, which you were discussing, of exactly what is open for discussion and what is, what are the limitations. So I think it'd be really good to fully understand as part of the joint meeting. Okay. Anything else with the work program?
Commissioner Aliff, did you have a question?
I did. So when I look at this, I assume there's based upon the timeline that he had talked about for all these TBDs, there's an implied sequencing. Is that true?
I would say somewhat. For example, we're working on the comprehensive plan, beginning effective, immediately. The MFTE discussion will likely come at us, I would anticipate probably second quarter-ish. The Snoqualmie Mill design standards are more based on the applicant's timing than anything the city can control. So that one's a little more up in the air. Mixed use final plan amendment probably is on a similar timeframe to the MFTE, if I had to guess. The other two, the wireless code and the sign code, are probably latter half of the year, just thinking through what we have going on and how we're going to have to sequence things. So I think that there is, broadly speaking, a sequencing, but it's hard to put specific timeframes on at this stage. And part of it is, as you heard, we do need to try to scope the MFTE, for example, a little better. And, when the Snoqualmie Mill folks come in with their design standards, that's going to suddenly suck up a lot of oxygen. So, we may need to shunt some other things to the side to get that done because it's a development related item.
Chair, can I?
Please.
So yeah, we thank you, Jason. And just to remind the commission members, we do have a future agendas list that we've been providing in each packet material, and it is a work in progress, but it is a tool that we're using to help preview items that we know we're going to onboard to the commission at these various meetings. So you won't see them all of them on the future agendas list right now, but we'll be adding those as space and time allows. And things do move. It is a bit of a moving target. Whatever we don't accomplish in 2023, we just shift down and reorganize maybe to 2024.
Good. Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Another thing that I want to mention, I didn't hear if Mr. Rogers had said this, but I just want to make sure that the Planning Commission was aware. When it comes to the Snoqualmie Ridge Mixed Use Final Plan Amendment, there is kind of a long-term desire that's been expressed by much of the council to ultimately bring the entire city into the code rather than having them under separate development agreements, mixed use final plans, and all these other things for a number of reasons. But currently, the code effectively applies to the downtown area, and then that's what, 1,000 residents, something like that. And then the rest of the city is under these other agreements. And taking care of this one issue that is very targeted will kind of give us a pathway to how do we go about doing those other things down the road that are kind of big picture items. So I just want to give you that little bit of context.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I neglected to mention that, but I'm glad you remembered and brought it up.
Good. Anything else? Any other comments on the work program? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to poll everybody for items of Plan Commissioner interest. Before I do so, though, I'd like to bring up something actually that Commissioner Goodman mentioned earlier in the meeting. Commissioner Mather, when he has attended, has been extremely value add. However, he has attended very few meetings. And what I'd like to recommend that we do is to not excuse him as an absence for today's meeting. Reach out to him one more time and just ask, do you really want to be part of the commission? Because we do have a big work schedule. And if the answer is no, and he fails to attend the next meeting, then I think we look to see if we can find a different commissioner. Because I think at this point, we've got too big a work schedule to go do that. So first, I'd like to suggest, since there has been no communication, that we vote him unexcused for today's meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And again, I think when he does show up, it's a value. So I will reach out to him and ask if there's something else we can do for his attendance. But I think after that, we ought to find out if he's going to be on the commission for 2023 or not. Okay. Having said that, let me poll the commissioners. Commissioner Aliff, any items of interest?
None at this time. Thank you.
Vice Chair Tessman,
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Goodman?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, I have one thing, and I think I said this a year ago. I'm just curious, having survived 25 hours without power, again, assuming a life without electricity is really not worth living. Is there any PSU plans to put any more underground, or is it just, if ever there's, unusual winds or something, we're just going to have to endure that type of stuff?
In broad terms, this is kind of what we're dealing with. Often what we see is, well, and especially on Snoqualmie Bridge, a lot of the power is underground already. And so there's really nothing more to do. What we often see is that we're getting damage to the transmission lines, the lines that feed the power to our community. And it's not so much local damage as it is damage that's elsewhere that is affecting us. And that is a large challenge for PSC to be dealing with on a regional basis, not just to any specific community. The other thing that comes into play, of course, is undergrounding power lines is expensive for PSC to do, and that cost ultimately gets passed back onto PSC's ratepayers. And so that ends up being a discussion between PSC and the state utilities commission when they go to set rates. There's already been, I don't suppose people are closely following it, but every so often PSC has to make a rate proposal to the state, and then the UTC has to then review it and say, yes, we're going to accept it, or no, we're going to essentially mandate this different rate structure instead. So the most recent round, PSC requested frankly, quite sizable rate increases, which the commission did not support, and they ratcheted them down and we're still going to see some fairly large increases. So it's always that push-pull at the end of the day, but PSC is also facing quite a bit of pressure because of state mandates related to renewable energy. Right. They're having to transition away from the coal power plant they own in Montana and some of their other power generation facilities into more renewables. That's expensive as well, just simply to acquire the structure or to buy the power on the open market. So they have a number of pressures. It's not to say that their transmission network is not also a priority, but I know it's an ongoing conversation, especially as we've seen the electrical outages become, more impactful over time due to, changes in our weather and just general growth in our communities. There are more people, and so outages affect more people as we go, and these longer outages, create issues for us. Beyond that, I can say that as part of the infrastructure bill that the federal government passed, that Congress passed this last year, they did retain a 30% tax rebate on solar panels and associated battery storage. So if that's something that's within your desires and financial capabilities, certainly that can be helpful. I know that people, it's things like Tesla Powerwalls, for example. Those are useful if you can afford them, and if they work for your situation, because not everybody's going to have a situation where solar panels are going to work for them. And certainly people install generators. We see all sorts of mechanical permits come in for generators, especially after.
I believe that, yeah.
So and I know those don't sound like particularly helpful in the context of what's PSE up to, but those have been and continue to be options as we look more broadly about grid resiliency and individual power consumer resiliency of this more distributed generation and having our own little islands, if you will, of power at times.
Right,
So-
right. Generators, I mean, I didn't fire mine up. I was just about to, but my neighbor did. That's like having a loud lawnmower in somebody's backyard. I mean, just going. I mean, so it's, but anyway, I don't want to rat hole that. I did want to give kudos to the city for getting out and plowing the roads. I know it was unusual conditions and they seem to get on it. So appreciate that from my perspective. So.
Well, I know that Phil Bennett, our urban forester, and the entire public works and the parks crew especially were out there. I talked to Phil. He said they had just gotten finished clearing all the debris from the first storm when the second one rolled in. So they were working hard to get things cleaned up, and also to keep us as safe as they could. So
Yeah,
we'll
no,
pass
it was
that on.
noteworthy. I appreciate that. Okay, then last we have the future agenda list.
Yeah, we touched on it briefly, of course, as part of the work program discussion. I'll show it, and I apologize. It's going to be difficult to read on the screen, but this is the future agenda items list. So I will say there's going to be changes coming to the look of this. This was kind of our first attempt at it, so to speak, and we have some ideas on how to adjust it, clean it up a bit, make it a little more usable, a little more readable. So I'll apologize again for the formatting. But you saw we have, here's the 17th of January and the items we have for tonight. We are looking, we'll have to talk with Chair Johnson some more about a joint Community Development Committee Planning Commission meeting, hopefully for your next meeting in February. There is a 3-week gap because of a 5th Monday in January coming up. So you'll get an extra break for if you're tired of hearing me talk. We'll give you more of an introduction on the mixed use final plan amendment and the multifamily tax exemption. So that will likely be part of that joint meeting to hear, Councilmember Johnson spoke of kind of the broader context for the MU mixed use final plan issue and how this is kind of the appetizer, so to speak, for a bigger, broader conversation. And also try to get some more, wrap ourselves around the MFTE discussion a little bit more. We don't have anything for the 20th of February right now. That is President's Day week, which is of course usually a holiday for many folks. So we can certainly have a discussion soon about whether that meeting should be canceled or not. We did push out if you recall, the design review approval for the Gear Automotive project over at Meadowbrook and Railroad Avenues. They need to come back on the colors because of course they're showing that very bright color on their garage door, which A is probably too bright, but B also wasn't final for them. We don't know whether they'll be ready on March 6th or not, but we're just kind of holding pattern on that until they can get moving better. And then we'll fill this in as we go, but that's kind of the lay of the land in the near term.
So do we believe we'll be ready for the joint CDC Planning Commission on February 6th?
I'm looking at these two over here. I don't,
I mean, the chair, I'd be able to speak, yeah. The idea was to allow for some collaboration and acknowledgement of the Planning Commission's work program, should it move forward as it's been drafted, and to seek other guidance as needed from the council committee. So I'm not sure how the Planning Commission and the CD committee have worked in the past, but it's a good thing to initiate the new year with a new work program and get some feedback and some acknowledgement. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, another thing that might be useful is if staff had a little bit more guidance on something like the mixed use final plan. So both committees can get that same information from staff at the same time. They could just make things a little bit easier for us, and we collaborate a little bit more on how we see that moving forward. So partly it'd be based on how staff feels comfortable with that by February 6th. But otherwise, I think it would be fine.
Yeah, I'd prefer if we could, that we go ahead and do that, because
Yeah.
I think it's likely that the President's Day week, which is also winter break, it'll be hard to get everybody together. And then after that, you're into March. So I'd recommend that if we can do it on February 6th, that become, we try to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I should mention that most likely at the next council meeting, which would be between now and then, we will receive new council committee and liaison appointments from the mayor pro tem, which would then be confirmed by the council. I have expressed a desire to continue on as the liaison to the Planning Commission and to continue being the chair of the Community Development Committee, but ultimately that's up to mayor pro tem and the council to decide. So we'll see. But provided that I continue in that role, then that'd be my desire moving forward, would be to have the meeting on February 6th.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Good. Any other comments? All right. At this point, I move that we adjourn our meeting here. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good night.
thanks, everybody.